Hello, beautiful humans. Good morning. Welcome to the Midlife Revolution. I'm Megan Connor. It's Thursday, October 2nd, just before noon. And I wanted to share some updates of things that I have learned about the attack on the LDS Church in Grand Blanc, Michigan. The last video that I did was a little bit of speculation on my part after hearing some brief comments from a person who was running for city council in the same town where the attacker lived. Trying to be careful with the words that I use here on this platform. Good morning, sis. Good morning, Georgiana. And I wanted to share an update because there have been several more interviews that this candidate has given across lots of news channels. In particular, there's one that I want to share, one video that I want to share, as well as I want to share some comments from friends of this individual, as well as a neighbor and some other people who've interacted with this person prior to this event happening. I also want to give a little bit of an update on some of the details that I learned from a couple of the press conferences that have gone on, and then some firsthand witness accounts from people who were actually inside the chapel at the time, and um, and then just kind of the response to this situation, as well as some of the comments that I've gotten on my channel since that particular video aired. So that is the agenda. I expect it maybe will take around 30 minutes or so. If anybody has questions, please call attention to them visually somehow in the chat with lots of question marks or an emoji so that I can see them, because I'm a visual person. And also forgive the dog noises because my dogs are right here with me. First of all, I just want to express again my deepest condolences to the people of Grand Blanc, especially to the ward members of the LDS Church there, the congregants who are there in the building, as well as anybody who might have lost someone on Sunday. This is an incredibly tragic event. It's just horrible to think that a place of worship is attacked. Anytime a place of worship is attacked, it makes all of us feel less safe, because churches, schools, homes, these are the places that should be the safest and should be the sanctuaries and should be the places where we feel the safest. And this kind of an attack obviously makes us all feel less safe for that reason. And I want to, express the fact that even though I am critical of the teachings of the LDS Church and the leadership of the LDS Church and some of their policies and practices, by no means does anybody deserve this kind of hatred or this kind of violence. And my attempts to understand the motives of the individual who did this are in no way any kind of an attempt to excuse their behavior at all. That's mainly for people who are new to my channel. For those of you who've been around a while, you know that my approach is always to understand the why behind people's behavior and actions, so that we can learn to recognize these types of behaviors and thoughts and ideas when we come across them in our everyday life, and to be willing to have the conversations to say something and to alert people when things don't seem right. I have an e-course that is available where I teach people how to recognize manipulation and control. That's something that I have specialized in. And that e-course is meant to help people who have manipulative or controlling people in their daily lives, and to give them the tools that they need in order to live more peacefully or communicate more peacefully with those types of people. So recognizing these behaviors, red flag behaviors, is something that I'm passionate about and passionate about teaching others about. I also do one-on-one coaching with people for relationships, for businesses, for how you can just have a better life. And that is all available at my website at third-verse.com. So thank you for being here. Thank you for caring about this case, for caring about the victims, and for caring about understanding how we got here so that we can make sure that we don't end up here again, or at least that we can try to prevent these kinds of things from happening again. Hi, everyone. Loves Angel's Eyes. Angel Eyes, thank you for modding today. Hello to everyone that I haven't gotten to say hi to. Old One, Miss Angry Seth, Elizabeth T., Michelle, Jana, Carla, just call me Kim. Good to see you guys. Crash D. Good to see some familiar faces in the chat this morning. So let me go ahead and go straight to this interview that was done by Brian Enton. I've got the link to this interview on my channel. Please go and subscribe to his channel. He does excellent reporting, and this is in addition to the work that he does in his regular job. So this channel is in addition to that, and it's a little bit more of an intimate setting where he investigates things that are important and interesting to him. So this is the candidate for city council that he interviewed. Again, this is not the only interview out there. This guy has talked to a lot of people and offered a lot of clarity. Now, in my last video, I made some speculations that perhaps the individual who attacked the church had maybe been a member of the church because they asked him to remove his tattoos. And I have a little bit more clarity on that now, that there's been more clarification from this city council candidate. So I want to make sure that we clear that up. Essentially, the candidate says that he was out canvassing neighborhoods to talk to people in his campaign for city council. And when he came across this gentleman, the shooter, he was very kind. He was very polite, allowed him to drive up into his driveway, get out of the car, and have a conversation. He said that they did not talk about anything political, which is very strange because this man is a candidate for a political office. Michelle, thanks for saying this. I have a great deal of respect for Brian Enton. I actually saw him several times covering the Texas floods when I was down there in Kerrville helping out, but I didn't want to approach him because I knew he was working. Anyway, plus, who am I? I'm a nobody. I would love to have him on my show, but my channel's so tiny. I don't know if he would, have the time to do that, but thank you. Anyway, he said this conversation was not political. He said most people will ask, are you Republican or Democrat? And who do you support? Who do you vote for? But this gentleman asked immediately about guns. What is your view on gun rights? And the candidate said he supported the Second Amendment. And then he said that the conversation immediately then turned to religion. So I'm going to play just a short part of this interview so that you can hear clearly this guy, the shooter, was not focused on politics at all. And I want to make that really abundantly clear.
And then the next question went into, what do you know about Joseph Smith, Brigham Young, Nauvoo, the Tablet, Salt Lake City, the Indians? And this is kind of where I just was like, I'm aware, and I did not give a direct answer. And then kind of the follow-up there, he was talking because he had tattoos, and he said, they wanted me. And again, after the initial discussion of his background, like his military service, serving overseas, his son, everything was just in generalities. Like there was no really definite, he didn't give me a name, he didn't give me a place or a time, but he said, they wanted me to remove my tattoos for sealment, which I know is a practice within the LDS church.
Okay, so he's talking about sealing. And so throughout this interview and the other interviews I've listened to with this man, he was essentially saying that the shooter had been dating someone who he called Miss Utah's little sister, and that they were boyfriend and girlfriend. They had a relationship, and he felt a lot of pressure to join the LDS church. And we'll visit another article in a minute where there's more information about his interactions with the actual LDS church. So, John Smith, thanks for being here. The individual who perpetrated the attack is deceased, was taken down on site by law enforcement individuals, and they do believe that he was acting alone. So I don't believe that there's anyone else involved in this. But essentially, what the candidate here was referring to is when he says sealment, he's talking about sealing. So in other words, if this man and his girlfriend had wanted to get married in the Mormon temple, they would, that's what a sealing ceremony is. If you want to get sealed in the temple, you get married civilly, but then there is a sealing. And everyone, I don't think it's all of that, all of this happened because of tattoos, but I'm trying to explain a little bit. So as many people have pointed out, it's not normal, especially now, for LDS leaders to ask someone to have tattoos removed in order to participate in LDS ordinances. However, this was a long time ago. This was back around the 2008, 2009, 2010 timeframe. And back then, there was a very different view about tattoos. In fact, the prophet at the time, Gordon Hinkley, had come out and said that that tattooing your body was like putting graffiti on the temple, because your body is the temple. There was a very different view of tattoos back then. Now they're a lot more tolerant of those things. And my speculation last time was that the only reason they would really ask him to remove tattoos is if they were explicit in nature. For example, if they showed any kind of nudity or profanity, then, that would have been something problematic. But my guess now is that this pressure was not necessarily coming from LDS leaders. It might have been coming from the girl or from the girl's family. But there is a stigma within the LDS faith about people with tattoos, especially from the older generations who have historically been less tolerant of tattoos and piercings and things like that. So I just wanted to clarify, they had asked him to possibly remove his tattoos for a sealing ceremony. And when I say they asked him to remove, it could have been, again, church leaders, or it could have been family members of this girlfriend, or it could have been the girlfriend herself.
And ultimately, then he continued to talk about how the Mormon Bible has additional books that are not in, I would say, denominational Christianity. And he did not like that. And again, I want to also stress is that he was not angry. I mean, if 10 is making the decision to drive your truck into a church, he was less than a 1. Like, there was no anger. And I've just seen comments about, well, you should have reported. We had a conversation in a driveway. While it might have not been a subject I wanted to discuss, I was going to listen to him. And by no means, in the piece 2 is like, under no circumstances was I am going to do X, or I think this should happen to Y. He just had his opinion and he stated it. And he stated it in a very calm, matter of fact. And again, like when I first came on the property, I waved because, like you said,
yeah. So essentially that's really all that's being said. This man was not angry when he was talking about that, when he was talking about any of this. And so again, it wasn't just the tattoos. Oh, this is interesting. Person of interest says, in the early 2000s, my grandson was asked by his bishop to have his small tattoo removed before he went on a mission. So that was very much the mindset in the LDS church around that time frame. Yes, Carla, the obvious thing is that we have a lot of problems. The LDS culture has a lot of problems, including essay of children, that are much more important to talk about and worry about than tattoos. But there we go. So anyway, the thing I want people to understand as well, the shooter seemed to have a beef with the Mormon church, that they had books that were outside of the Bible. this candidate says he did not like that. I think that Mormons have and when I say Mormons, I'm talking about the entirety of the Mormon spectrum, which includes not just the mainstream LDS church, but also all the branch offs of the LDS church, like the FLDS, the Strangites. There are so many different offshoots of the LDS church. Around 30,000 people in the United States practice polygamy as a result of branching off from the original Joseph Smith church. So I'm talking about the whole spectrum. So Mormons in general have a very, they're very much unaware of how the rest of the Christian world views them and their religion. There are so many people out there that say Mormons are not Christian because they believe in a non-Trinitarian view of God, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Ghost. They believe that God and Jesus Christ are two separate individuals. That's not mainstream Christianity. So a lot of mainstream denominations will say that Mormons aren't Christian. And a lot of denominations are, um, you know, pressed or upset by the fact that Mormons tout the Book of Mormon as the Word of God, because in the Bible it says, that there should only be one Bible, and you shouldn't add or take away from God's Word. And some denominations believe that Mormons are adding to God's Word by having the Book of Mormon. A lot of people believe that Mormons' theology is heretical, meaning like just as bad as you can get in warping the views of the Bible. And Mormons largely don't realize how other denominations perceive them. And so this man, I would say, has a pretty normal view of Mormonism from the lens of saying that Mormons have extra scriptures and Mormons teach things that are heretical to other churches. Hey, Kresha, how are you? Good to see you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your support. So I just wanted to put that out there because, I've gotten a lot of comments from, faithful believing LDS people who had a lot of problems with what I had to say last time. But anyway, this man, the shooter, obviously had a lot of things about the LDS church that he didn't like. And of course, that is not a reason to commit any kind of violence. But, he also had some drug use in his past life. He also did some military service. He may or may not have suffered from PTSD or some other kind of mental illness. We don't know for sure right now. Those things haven't been revealed yet. But when you take any one of those things and combine it with a sort of an obsession over the negativity that you experienced in a church or in a relationship, that's where things can go awry. And I'm going to read an article here in a second that'll shed a little bit more light on this man, what I believe his obsession with the LDS church. But the rest of this interview, essentially, the candidate says that the shooter really wanted to talk about this topic. It was important to him to talk about this topic. Again, he asked about Joseph Smith, Brigham Young, the golden plates, Nauvoo, Indians, all of those things. And then the last thing that he said was that Mormons are the Antichrist. And again, he wasn't angry when he said this. There was no indication that he was going to do anything violent towards LDS people, just that these were his views that he wanted to express. And said that this guy was gregarious and outgoing, and at one point even took the hand of his special needs daughter to greet her in a kind way. So he said at the end of this interview that he got absolutely zero red flag or creepy vibes from this guy at all. And as a father, with his daughter there in the truck, obviously protective of his daughter, didn't get any sort of creepy vibes from this guy at all. So now I want to go to this Associated Press article that talks about the friend or friends of this man. the individual who did the shooting. And I'll change this view so you can see it a little bit better. Apologies for the ads that run on all of these pages. But the title of this article says it all. Friends of the Michigan church shooting suspect say he long carried hatred toward the Mormon faith. Two childhood friends said Sanford had moved to Utah after leaving the Marines and told his friends he had become addicted to methamphetamines. No longer the happy-go-lucky kid who was voted class clown of their graduating class, Sanford routinely spouted off about his grievances against the church, his friends said. The first time they heard it was at a wedding 13 years ago. We were like, come on, we don't want to hear this, said Bobby Kalush, who grew up down the road from Sanford. When he came back from Utah, he was a completely different person. So obviously very changed by his relationship and by his interactions with the church there. Then it goes on to talk about the candidate that I've been referencing. His name is his last name is Johns, Chris Johns, who is the candidate for city council in Burton, Michigan. That's where the shooter lived. He went, so this goes on to say that Sanford moved to Utah shortly after leaving the military. His friends said they noticed a change when he moved back home, thinking his battle with addiction was to blame. Kalush said his friend was no longer the short, stocky ball of energy who once bought dozens of flowers to give out to girls before the homecoming dance. Around bonfires with friends, it wasn't unusual for Sanford to start talking about how Mormons were going to take over, said Francis Tersigny, I think it is, Tersigny, who along with his twin brother was among Sanford's best friends. It was just so random. It was like, why Mormons, dude? Tersigny said. It's hard to explain. We didn't take it seriously. But there were no signs he was a threat to anyone, Tersigny said. An avid hunter, Sanford was married now and raising a child at home. He never said, I've got to do something, he said. There's a Jake we all knew, and there was one who was hidden. It wasn't apparent to us. So I think it's important to point that out. And the next thing that I want to share with you is this article from the Detroit Free Press, where they went into the, oh shoot, what did I do now? I was trying to click off the ad. Apparently the Detroit Free Press is not free. But I wanted to go into this article because they detailed the voting history of the shooter of Sanford from voting records. So sorry, it's taking a while to scroll because these ads are trying to take up all the bandwidth. Sanford voted in the November elections in 2024, 2022, 2020, 2018, and 2016, but he doesn't have a track record of voting in an August primary, presidential primary or municipal election, according to a database maintained by Practical Political Data, said Democratic consultant Mark Grebner, who works for the firm and has collected and analyzed voter and election records in the state for decades. Sanford's voting track record indicates that he was not a committed partisan with a strong desire to weigh in on intra-party fights, and that he didn't seem to pay close attention to local politics, according to Grebner. Without Sanford's participation in a presidential primary, his affiliation with a political party cannot be gleaned from election records. In Michigan, voters are not asked to list a party affiliation when they register to vote, but when they vote in a presidential primary, they must request a specific party's ballot to participate in that party's primary election. And here is a picture of Sanford's driveway, which I showed on the, I think the second video that I did on this, where you can see a Trump Vance sign, but it's behind a stop sign. So reading into that, I don't know, does it saying stop Trump and Vance, or is it saying in favor of Trump and Vance? There's another picture that came from an ABC article that I showed the other day with Sanford wearing a pro-Trump shirt. However, Some sources have suggested that might have been doctored, but what is more important is factually to say Sanford also appears to have signed 2 petitions as a Michigan voter favored by conservatives. He appears to have signed a petition to curtail emergency powers, according to the database, that came amid a COVID-19 backlash to public health orders and Governor Gretchen Whitmer's handling of the pandemic. Sanford also appears to have signed a petition supported by Right to Life of Michigan to restrict abortion access in Michigan, the database indicates. So while we do not have a particular party affiliation for this man, his voting record does not say, exactly who he voted for in, all of these elections. So he doesn't seem to have like a strong party affiliation, but, he signed these 2 petitions and seemed to be conservative. But that, again, does not mean that he was necessarily a Trump supporter. It doesn't mean he was necessarily Republican, but also doesn't mean he was necessarily Democrat. So I don't think that political affiliation was any kind of a motive in this. And I think it's important for us to consider that. Jana Smith, thank you for this. The history of meth use is important here. My brother's a meth abuser. It changes your brain in ways most drugs do not. It causes permanent physical brain damage. It changes people's personality. And I agree with that 100%. The scientific and medical data supports what you're saying. And I think it is one of the most important things to talk about in this case. I agree with this 100%, John Smith. Instead of becoming more tolerant, it seems people are becoming more polarized when it comes to religion. And that's why I have strongly advocated on my channel for us to have better conversations with each other. And one of the commenters I went back and forth with yesterday and the day before was a comment on my channel that was very polarizing, that was saying they hate us and they want to destroy us. That's the kind of rhetoric that divides us. And I want us to stop using that kind of language of they, of us and them, of othering, and of making assumptions about what they think about us. Because just because someone disagrees with your religious ideology does not mean they hate you. I do not hate the Mormon church. I do not hate Mormons. I don't hate the LDS people. I disagree. There's a difference there. I'm also, advocating for tolerant treatment of LDS people. I don't have any kind of a beef with the people. My beef is with the policies, with the leaderships, with the system. And I wish that people would have that same frame of mind when we talk about political ideology as well. Just because someone votes Democrat doesn't mean they hate Republicans and vice versa. Just because someone disagrees with your abortion stance doesn't mean they hate you. And I wish that we would back up and have more respectful conversations and ask better questions of each other so that we can better understand each other. I want to go on to share. Oh, sorry. This is the one that I just. Oh, was that whole time? Was I not sharing this article from the Detroit? I was still sharing the AP article. So I apologize, guys. Sometimes I don't hit the right buttons. But in any case, this is the Detroit Free Press article that I was reading from. Here's the picture that I was talking about. So I apologize if you were unable to see that while I was reading it. I want to go on to another interview with a friend of the shooter who talked about an unfortunate situation that happened just a little while before. Lake Love 501, I don't want to, we can't jump to this conclusion. We don't know that he was a Trump supporter. I'm not trying to whitewash anything. I'm trying to call for reasonable, critical thought. Because again, I just shared his voting history. And while it sounds like he had some conservative ideas, there was nothing to indicate that he supported Trump other than a picture of him with a Trump t-shirt on from 2020. His political views may have changed since then, or the picture could have been photoshopped. So again, without any kind of factual proof that he was a Trump supporter, we don't know that for sure. He had American flags in the back of his truck, not Trump flags, American flags. So, I'm trying to help people to not jump to conclusions, because I think that only serves
shock and sadness
to sow more and more division between people. I'm trying to help people to not be polarized and divided against each other. As I often say, we have a lot more in common than we do have different from each other, and I'd like to focus on our commonalities rather than on our differences. Here is the interview that I was talking about with a former friend of Sanford.
Longtime family friends of suspected Grand Blanc LDS mass shooter Thomas Jacob.
Not sure why my audio is not playing. I think I just need to reboot my whole computer, but not right now. Let me see if I can change some settings.
Sanford, who went by Jake.
I'm curious if you guys can hear that or not. Let me remove that and try to share it again. See if that fixes it.
But not utter surprise.
If you ask me.
Okay, if you guys can hear it, then that's what matters. I'm going to switch to regular. Apologies for the technical difficulties there. Okay, I'm hoping this fixes it.
Out of everybody I know, to pick 10 people you think might do something a little like this, I wouldn't not pick him. And I hate saying that.
Kara Pattison shared these photos of Jake, who she described as a fun-loving family guy, but also a guy that harbored unkind feelings towards her.
Skipping there a little bit. I'm glad you guys can hear it. Again, this is from clickondetroit.com. WDIV. My thanks to them, Channel 4, for allowing this use under YouTube's fair use.
Groups.
I'm going to just let it, I'm going to rewind it just a little bit.
Towards certain groups.
He definitely talked about groups of people in ways that weren't acceptable.
And Kara says she and her daughter had a scary and bizarre encounter with him 48 hours before the mass shooting in his truck as they were walking. This is a photo from right after that incident.
We started across and the truck gunned its engine and came at us. And I blocked my daughter. Saved you. And we jumped back, and then the window rolled down and it was Jake, and he was laughing. He's like, "Oh, got you guys," And
was that normal behavior for him?
I mean, he'd never pretended to run us over before, so no, it wasn't normal behavior.
Kara's 16-year-old daughter, Lydia, used to babysit for Jake's son, Brantley, and is completely shattered by the news of his suspected involvement in this mass shooting.
Yeah, so just to rewind, because there was a little confusion about what she actually said. She said out of 10 people that I know, she would not pick him as someone to do this.
10 people you think might do something a little like this. I wouldn't not pick him. And I hate saying that.
I wouldn't not pick him, is what she said. So possibly she thought maybe he would have done something like this. that it was possible, maybe, because she said he had views about certain groups that were not okay. So he was obviously very vocal about things that he believed about certain groups of people. She didn't go on to specify anything else about that. The next thing I want to talk about is I want to go to the actual victims. In this case, we have some firsthand accounts from people who were actually in the chapel at the time, and there has been there have been, I should say, unconfirmed rumors that the shooter asked people in the chapel, Jesus or Joseph, meaning, do you believe in Jesus or do you believe in Joseph Smith? Do you worship Jesus or do you worship Joseph Smith? And again, this has not been confirmed by law enforcement, but I've heard it in several different places. And we also have a written statement from someone who was inside the church at the time of the incident. I'm going to share this from my friend Rebecca Bibliotheca. I have her channel linked in the description of this video. She runs the Mormonish podcast along with her friend Landon Brophy. And this is a post that she made yesterday. She says, according to early witness statements circulated on social media, the Michigan church shooter asked victims, quote, Jesus or Joseph Smith before opening fire. However, this detail has not been officially confirmed by law enforcement. Most people are discounting this at this point, but I wonder, one of the victim's daughters just released a handwritten letter about the experience and said she, quote, answered his question. And another person who was inside the church made a post saying that an elderly gentleman couldn't answer Jesus fast enough and was shot. If this did happen, what would be the reason not to report on it? So I want to read this very heartbreaking account from this young person who was there in the chapel. It says, I know many of you may not want to hear this. When I gave a description of Thomas to the FBI, I told them he had blue eyes brightened by tears, red and teary. All I saw as I searched my memory was blue eyes. When he came over to me, I felt very calm, peaceful, even as I kneeled next to my dad, her dad had been shot and killed. My hands still on Dad. I felt like a long time. I stared into his eyes while answering his question. The only way I can describe it is I saw into his soul. I never took my eyes off his eyes. Something happened. I saw pain. He felt lost. I deeply felt it with every fiber of my being. I forgave him. I forgave him right there, not in words, but with my heart. Later, I kept asking to see a picture of him. Something about his blue eyes caused me confusion. I questioned if I was remembering what I saw correctly. When I finally saw his picture, his eyes were not blue. I couldn't understand. I know what I saw. It was seared into my brain. In the middle of the night, while texting my sister, I realized it was my eyes I saw. I saw into his soul and he saw into mine. He let me live. I'm sharing this now because I believe it's just one of many reasons I was there. Just one of the reasons. I needed to share this for Papa, for Dad, for anyone who can set aside hate. Maybe that time won't be now for you, but maybe one day. What we say and do matters. Fear breeds anger, anger breeds hate, hate breeds suffering. I believe that's a Star Wars quote. Yoda said, if we can stop the hate, we can stop the suffering. But stopping the hate takes all of us. I promise you, if for 1 month you can stop using crude language, if you stop taking the Lord's name in vain, this is a very Mormon thing, you will feel a change. We can start there. If you stop letting anger in, hate can't spread. We can stop it. We can stop the anger and the hate and stop suffering somewhere for someone. And I second that. I don't know the name of the person who wrote this, but just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful words. And I agree with them wholeheartedly. And I echo this. This is another post by someone who was there in the chapel. My family are safe and alive, but traumatized. Someone attacked our stake center. The stake is a collection of congregations. So this would have been a larger building that would have accommodated larger congregations for these regional meetings that they would have. The next church building closest to us and full of friends and family members of our ward members. Ward is a congregation. It was a hate crime, and people were shot and killed during sacrament meeting. The building was burned down. People escaped to hide in the woods. I held a woman who couldn't find her husband, escorted her to her car, and asked the police to let her out so she could go to the hospital once they located him, praying he was still alive. I held my seminary kid while they sobbed because grandma was shot, and one of my dear friends because her father-in-law couldn't profess Jesus fast enough through this stutter, so he was murdered in cold blood for his beliefs, for my beliefs. If you approve of easy access to guns, I have no words. I heard all the children survived. My son's teen friends are accounted for and alive. I can't say anyone is okay. We were there last night having a team festival. We can't stop crying. I always want to be focused on the experiences of the victims. And I am not disrespecting them by qualifying what they say as, quote, very Mormon. I am not othering them. I was saying that taking the Lord's name in vain and stopping that practice is a very Mormon thing. I think Mormons are one of the only religions who focus on not saying the Lord's name in vain. I think I've heard almost every other faithful person from other religions that I've seen say, oh my God, with regularity. Mormons are pretty much the only ones who focus on not doing that. And that's the reason that I just was, in reading this very sweet, beautiful, innocent letter from this individual pleading for less hatred. She was saying, if you can stop swearing or stop taking the Lord's name in vain, that can change something in your heart. That's a beautiful thing. I wanted to point out that that's a beautiful thing about Mormonism. So please don't make the assumption that when I point out that something is Mormon, that I'm being disrespectful or that I'm trying to disparage the religion. When Brandon Boudreaux gave his statement after the guilty verdict in his case against Lori Vallow Daybell, he quoted scripture and he expressed his Mormon beliefs. And I commented that it was one of the most beautiful expressions of faith that I've ever heard. So again, I don't hate Mormons. I don't hate the LDS Church. I certainly don't hate individual members. I've often said they're faithful people, good citizens, good people just trying to do good in the world. So again, there's this sort of idea that if somebody says something negative about your dearly held religious beliefs, that they're being hateful. That's just not the case. We don't have to agree, but if we will listen to each other, then we'll understand each other better. Thank you so much, Cass Walrath, sending all of Megan's followers, subs, love, and peace. Thank you. I appreciate that so much. Thank you for this, W. Ross. I was taught in Catholic school not to take the Lord's name in vain. Again, different religions interpret that. It's one of the 10 commandments, but different religions interpret that differently. Anyway, I do want to explain myself, Crash D, because I don't want LDS people, faithful people, to misunderstand my motives and my intentions. And so when someone does misunderstand my intentions, I want to do my best to explain. Anyway, that's all. Thank you for this, Cat Lady. Thanks for your cob. coverage. Okay. Appreciate you, Cat Lady. Thank you for the sticker. In a minute, I'm gonna talk about some of the comments that I've received on my channel from faithful LDS people, just because I just want people to understand. Just Call Me Kim says, W. Ross, we were told not to in my Pentecostal church, but everyone said, oh my God. So yeah, I think it's just a pretty common thing among almost everybody except the LDS people. Again, different religions interpret how to keep the commandments differently, what it means to keep the Sabbath day holy, what it means to not worship false idols, all of that. I want to share one more thing from my friend Nathan Hinkley. Nathan Hinkley is thanks, Miss Angry Seth. I love your mug. I have the same one. I wonder where you might have gotten it. My friend Nathan Hinkley is a former bishop in the LDS Church. I have interviewed him on my channel before. And I have the link to his channel as well as the link to my interview with him on my channel. And I want to share his perspective too, because I think it's an important one as well. I've heard that there was a GoFundMe where the LDS people raised money for the family of Sanford, for Sanford's family. I want to share this perspective. Nathan says, yes, I condemn the shooting at the Mormon church, of course. What an evil son of a bitch. I want to speak to something I've seen on my feed regarding the Mormons raising money for the killer's family. First of all, kudos to the Mormons. That's a nice gesture. I think they've raised over $150,000. One of my friends is using this as proof that Mormons are Christian because, quote, only someone with Christ in their heart could do such a thing. A couple of thoughts. One, I heard a rumor that the wife of the killer either attends, is a member, or was meeting with the church leadership, possibly over a divorce or separation. Not sure if that's true, but it's possible that it's not a complete stranger, meaning a stranger to this particular congregation. If it is true, it would help possibly explain a motive of the killer. I want to say I also don't know if that is true. That is a speculation that I made, and I don't know if other people have made the same speculation. I got a comment on my channel that said the Mormon church does not separate families, that they would try to unite them. Well, in the case of, if you're in an abusive marriage, or if your spouse is experiencing mental illness that's untreated, or some other circumstance that puts you in danger, they absolutely would help you to get out of that relationship if you asked for that help. So let's kind of try to clear that up. Not any relation to President Hinkley. Hey, Diamond Dave, it's good to see you. Just trying to watch the chat a little bit, guys, because I know sometimes this conversation around religion can get heated, and I want to be respectful. So number 2, yes, church members can be incredibly nice, especially in situations that get attention, such as natural disasters, complete with their yellow Mormon Helping Hands t-shirts, so everybody can see where the help is coming from. 3, yes, I believe that Mormons are Christian. My opinion is that anybody that claims to be a Christian is a Christian. Yes, they have differences in their theology, but so do other Christian denominations such as Baptist versus Catholic. They are Christian. Number 4, as a Mormon bishop myself from 2013 to 2017, it was my responsibility to keep the 200 ward members safe in this type of event. We had rando weirdos come in from off the street multiple times, and we had to call the police on more than one occasion. My opinion is that there should not be a no-gun policy, as there is. I knew that many members had guns in our ward, though I never did. I was the one that people would ask for and was directed to. This is not safe. Number 5, the members raising money is one thing, but where is the help from the church? They are worth hundreds of billions of dollars. When my house burned down, they wrote me a $1,000 check. About the same help as the boot barn down the street, which gave my entire family new boots. yet they took my 10% tithing every year. I say all that to say Mormons can be loving and caring in these types of events, but if you ask honest questions about the beliefs or if you come to a different conclusion regarding their truth claims, they can be absolutely brutal. And I can attest, and I will show you the screenshots in a second. I could copy and paste stories for days where people were shunned, slandered, and maligned for not believing in the accepted and correlated narrative. Children of Mormon parents have been disowned, cut out of wills, etc. This happens all the time. My own elders quorum president told me, quote, "Of course you fell away because you never had a true testimony." I nevertheless commend the members in this case. So thank you, Nathan, for your perspective. It's not going to be popular with faithful LDS people, but it is an important perspective. And I want to say too, the LDS Church has made several statements about this incident. Several of the highest church leaders have made statements and social media posts. Susan's husband, David Bednar, and Susan herself were there at the site visiting with survivors, and it was very well publicized. I have no idea if the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is giving money or donating money to the victims or the survivors or any of that. I have no idea. And until any of that is confirmed, I have no idea. So I don't know what their response is, but it would be interesting to know if they are helping the families, the victims, if they're going to rebuild this church or not. I mean, can't really rebuild it. They're pretty much going to have to raise it and start over, but it will be interesting to see. But here's one last thing I want to share with you before I share the screenshots of comments on my channel. This is chilling. And maybe you guys knew about this and I didn't, but okay, I don't need to share audio anymore, so I think I'm okay. Okay, guys, maybe you guys knew about this and I didn't, but I did not know that there was another shooting back in June of 2025, eerily similar to this incident. This U.S. News on New York Post report reads, "Madman opens fire at Michigan church as video shows faithful running for their lives." This happened about an hour south of Grand Blanc in a suburb of Detroit at Cross Point Community Church in Wayne, Michigan. It says at least one person was wounded in a shooting at a Michigan church before the gunman was shot dead by a security guard early Sunday morning. The gunfire erupted shortly after 11 a.m., sending parishioners inside running for shelter. This is actual footage of that, which I'm not going to play because it's very triggering. But the shooting came about a half an hour into the morning services. Police said on Facebook, upon arrival, officers determined that a security guard for the church shot and killed the suspect. One victim was shot in the leg and survived, apparently. The gunman was on his way into the church when another person tried to stop them with their truck. And I missed this part of the article. But the chilling thing is that this man rammed his truck into the entrance of this church at Cross Point and then started firing on the crowd. Church senior pastor Bobby Kelly told the Detroit News that the man in the truck was a deacon at the church and ran over the armed attacker before he could go inside where 150 parishioners were attending services. He was run over by one of our members who saw this happening when he was coming into church. The gunman was on his way into the church when another person tried to stop him with their truck. The shooter opened fire at the vehicle and was shot dead by the church's security guard. Wayne police said the incident is under investigation. So this is chilling to me because it makes me think that it's very possible that Sanford knew about this incident and made a plan of his own. The things that I have figured out, or the things that I have gleaned from the news conferences that I have watched, have said that the victims were everywhere from 6 to 78 years old. The youngest victim, 6-year-old, was shot in the arm and survived. There were 3 IEDs found, either in the truck or next to the truck, near the truck. They were made from fireworks, and allegedly gasoline was used as an accelerant, meaning that if he was making IEDs with fireworks, that this was planned well in advance. So I don't think it had anything to do with the death of the prophet that occurred the day before this incident happened. Sorry, this incident happened. I was reading a comment that had that word in it. I apologize. And so this is chilling to me that something like this happened just an hour south of this incident back in June of this year. It makes me think that Sanford was somewhat of a copycat on this. I agree with this, Miss Angry Seth. Many people claim to be Christian without deigning to follow what Jesus taught. That is across all denominations of Christianity. And Marie Ascuri says the church put out a request for other members to help out with money donations for funeral arrangements. So I don't think the church itself is helping monetarily. In my opinion, the LDS church should just pay for the funerals of everyone who was taken in this event. They certainly could do that, and they should. Cass Walrath, thank you for the super chat. I hope that more places of worship are not targeted. It's just heartbreaking to know people cannot gather in community. I've been so nervous to leave my house all week. How do we trust the world? Cass, I unfortunately don't have a good answer for you. It is so scary when things like this happen. It's really hard to regain that sense of safety when you're shaken in the community. And I'm so sorry that you're feeling this way. I think many people are. Firefly Dimensional says their local bishop will help with anything they need. There are fast offerings available for this. So LDS people once a month believe in fasting. In other words, no food or water for 2 meals for 24 hours. And they donate the money that they would have spent on that food to their local congregation. And those funds are used to help people locally. So let's see. Now I just want to share a few of the comments that I've gotten on my channel, because again, anybody who's listened to me for more than 5 minutes knows that I try to be very respectful of the LDS people while I'm critical of the LDS church. And this is in no particular order. Actually, I'm going to save the banned one for last, but I don't know in which order I received these. I just started taking screenshots because I literally don't have time to answer all of these comments. But I want people to know that I see them, and I want people to know that I'm not sure why New York Post is still up there. Let me try to get that off there. I want people to know that I do see them, and that I consider them, but I don't have time to respond to all of them. So this one says, this is from, I want to put myself down here so we can see. Rick Skinner, 3189. The shooter shot real bullets because of his hate and spite, and he was less hateful and incendiary than you are regarding the LDS faith. Your arguments are self-serving, full of unsubstantiated lies, and only inform on your inability to seek and comprehend the real purposes of the Church of Jesus Christ. Apparently, your 40-plus years in the faith sailed right over your head. We get it. You feel you were duped. But that is because you coasted on the testimonies and traditions of others rather than finding a witness/epiphany of the truth for yourself. Without that epiphany, which is spelled wrong twice, the first gust of wind will knock your belief over. Now you've found a truth that you say suits you better and doesn't require an epiphany for belief. Please just let the past go, live your new life, and quit spewing hate and misinformation. Just because you don't believe something doesn't mean it isn't true. Simply means you haven't discovered the necessary information to know. All of this is terrible, but I take exception especially to the fact that what I'm saying is more hurtful than the real bullets that were fired. Melissa, yes, I did go through the temple personally. I was a gospel doctrine teacher. I was a Relief Society teacher. I was a ward missionary. I served in the young women and primary presidencies. I've held every music calling that's possible to hold in the LDS church. And at the height of my faith, I was going to the temple once a week, every Saturday morning, because that's when I knew my kids were asleep and I could go worship in the temple. But yeah, I agree with you. It's a way out of bounds to say that I'm more hateful than an actual killer. And also, whenever people accuse me of spreading lies, I ask them to please be specific. Where are the, quote, unsubstantiated lies? Please be specific about that. Because if I'm getting something wrong, I want to know. But because I taught gospel doctrine for 6 years, I did a lot of research and reading from all of the faithful sources, only the faithful sources. I followed the counsel to only read out of the faithful sources and all of that for the longest time. The Joseph Smith Papers Project podcast was on constantly. I attended every session of General Conference and took copious notes on those. So I was extremely faithful in the Mormon Church. I know a lot about the church. I don't know everything, but I know a lot more than the faithful members who have never investigated, real actual history, than the ones who have, especially the ones who have not read the gospel topic essays and clicked on every single footnote in the gospel topic essays. So, this is, of course, infuriating to me that Mormons will assume that I never had a real testimony. I never got my own witness, that I just relied on other people's testimonies. It's offensive to me because I spent hours and hours, countless hours on my knees in prayer, had many, many witnesses from what I believed at the time was the Holy Ghost, that this was true. And I was a very, very faithful member. I was all in. I was all the way in. So it's offensive to me when people suggest that I just didn't have enough faith and that the first gust of wind knocked my belief over. That's offensive to me. Renee Drake, thanks for the super sticker. I appreciate you. Yeah, Kiki, CES letter was the first non-LDS thing I ever read at age 30. I actually read the CES letter as a faithful, believing member, and I was not really swayed by it that much, to be honest with you. I know a lot of people are, but anyway. I just have a couple more that I want to share. I know I'm pronouncing this incorrectly, Siobhan. Shibin or Siobin Mars, I don't know how to pronounce that, I'm sorry, says there's no evidence Joseph Smith lied about the first vision. Well, there actually is. If you go to the top gospel topic essays, you will read that the first account of the first vision was written way longer than the account that LDS people now accept as the true account of the first vision. And it only mentions Joseph Smith seeing the Lord and that his sins were forgiven. There's no mention of seeing God and Jesus Christ, and there's no mention of not joining other churches. And that is something that is on the website at churchofjesuschrist.org in the gospel topic essays. Nina Canadian, thank you. It's pronounced Siobhan. Thank you. I knew it was something like that. Thank you. If anything, the trials he experienced because he wouldn't deny it proves it not. That's a logical fallacy. Who would put up with torture, being tarred and feathered? The church does have the largest humanitarian program of any religious institution in the world. That is incorrect. And I'm about to do a video about the top 10 wealthiest churches. And spoiler alert, the LDS church gives less of its, total net worth than at least 4 of the other top 10 wealthiest churches. So I'm going to do a whole deep dive on that. And this comment actually inspired that research. So thank you for that. They go on to say, Siobhan goes on to say, be careful about bagging the church because you've had a bad experience. I've been there. I'm not a big fan of the book, but I'm not leaving the church because I believe and love my Savior and Redeemer, Jesus Christ. Take heart from the change and emphasis President Nelson encouraged. The church has top tier of the most loving and humble servants. That I will agree with, a lot of them are. But he's talking about the quorum of the 12 apostles and the first presidency, which I don't agree that they are loving and humble servants. They are not loving towards LGBTQ people. They are not loving towards individuals who are critical of them. They are not loving towards large groups of people. They were not loving towards Black people until 1978. And some of them still aren't. He goes on to say they receive a stipend, a living allowance, and travel expenses. They come from well-paid careers. The church doesn't attempt to reimburse them at the level they were used to. Well, yes, that's true. They receive a stipend, which is around $140,000 a year. They also, that's their living allowance, but they also have an allowance for clothing and for a car. And they have a commissary that they get to go to where everything is basically free, like all of their personal care items. And they do receive money for travel as well. They also receive a $1 million loan when they get put into church leadership, which they can use to pay off debts, or they can use that to buy second homes or invest or do whatever they want with that $1 million. They go on to say, don't sow seeds of contempt. Talk to someone who will listen to you with compassion and love. Well, Siobhan, I wish you would listen to me with compassion and love, but you're not. So then they go on to say again, and they left probably 7 or 8 comments. These are the only 2 that I'm going to show you. Megan, the church doesn't help couples split up. I addressed this earlier. If anything, they would be helped to resolve their problems. Hopefully not if it's an abusive situation, because go back to your abuser is not a healthy thing to do. The child would not be given a blessing which heals him. We believe that our earthly challenges are given to us so that we grow. I can just say 100% my experience is that I was given blessings of healing when I was sick or injured. My son, who's a type 1 diabetic, was given blessings of healing to heal him. The literal words that they say when they give that blessing is, I pronounce upon you a blessing of healing in the household of faith. That's just what that, that was my personal experience. So again, LDS people who are coming across this, just because you had a different experience in the church doesn't mean that mine is not valid. I have 2 more to share. This is WVG 4800. This is by far the longest comment that I received, and there wasn't enough room on this for me to include his username and the whole screenshot. So this is the username. There's quite a bit of speculation there, but I'm going to go to, this is the full comment here. Coming from someone such as yourself who is anti-LDS, you're basically giving anyone who has beef with the church, and I think they missed a word. I think what they meant is permission here. You're basically giving anyone who has a beef with the church permission to shoot up, blow up congregations by making excuses for this mentally ill man. Obviously, I completely disagree with that, and equating what I'm doing to giving people excuses to commit violence is a ridiculous claim. I have condemned violence at every single possible opportunity that I've had, and I've said that nobody deserves to have this happen. And I am not anti-LDS. I am anti-abuse. I am anti not protecting children. I'm anti-dishonesty. I'm anti-disingenuousness. I'm anti-lies. I'm anti-hate. So that's it. I'm not anti-LDS. I'm pro protecting children. I'm pro telling the truth. I'm pro being transparent. I'm pro being responsible with finances. I'm pro feeding the poor and needy. The end. So going on, there's no excuse for shooting a child in the back. I agree with that. All of the anti-LDS podcasters only add fuel to the fire of these mental psychos who have military PTSD, drug addictions, etc. Okay, who's speculating now? Those, quote, nice guys in the white shirts that go around talking about the Book of Mormon, those are young missionaries, and you are putting a target on their backs with your rhetoric. I completely disagree. I'm not inciting violence. I'm doing exactly the opposite. This killer did not harm the leaders in white shirts. He shot up, burned down a congregation of ordinary people, children, whose only desire was to go worship Jesus Christ as they see fit according to their beliefs. I agree, that was horrible and disgusting. Name me any other Christian church who does more for the poor, feed the hungry, and disaster victims. I'll wait. Once again, I can tell you equivocally that there are many other churches that do way more than the LDS Church does. Yes, they gave $1.45 billion to charity, or they counted that among their charitable donations last year. But when they have over $300 billion, that $1.45 billion is not, it's not even 1% of their wealth. And in addition to that, if they followed their own tenets of tithing and gave 10%, it would be 30 billion, not 1 billion. So anyway, moving on to the next thing, by singling out the Daybells, you're sandbagging the majority of the good church members and highlighting a couple of psychos who in no way, shape, or form follow the teachings of Jesus or the church. So this person is talking about my dumb cousin, Lori Vallow Daybell. I reported on her case, and I'm not sure why this person would have followed me on that case and this case. I don't know why this person is even on my channel if they disagree with me so vehemently. But the Daybells absolutely did follow the teachings of the LDS Church. Their theology is rooted in LDS teachings, and I've gone over that extensively. There are millions of church members, so yes, there are criminals in every congregation of Christianity, sometimes even the preacher or pastor. I agree. It's not confined to the LDS Church. I agree. So you come on here bashing a good Christian church with some flawed members, but in the same breath, you're going to praise and quote, atheist spiritual director with a master's degree in theology. Yes, I am, because Britt Hartley is a beautiful human being, and she's incredibly intelligent. I don't know what is wrong with praising an atheist spiritual director with a master's degree in theology. That is legitimate, I believe. Sounds like you've been duped by the secular world cultists. Nope. Goes on to say, no, dear, we have nothing in common. That's actually not true. We do have something in common. We both spent a lot of time in the LDS Church, apparently. And we also have in common, probably, that we want kindness and respect. We want to be treated with kindness and respect, and we want peace and prosperity for the people we love. I don't know if that's true or not. I hope we have that in common, but that's what I want to focus on. Anyway, going on. What you're doing with this podcast is sowing hate, division, and chaos in this country. I disagree. You can tell me whether or not you agree in chat, in comments. I am trying to do the opposite of that. Being critical of an organization and its teachings is not hateful, especially since nothing that I'm saying about the organization is untrue. They go on to say, I'm sorry you can't see that. Aren't you yourself pitting society at large against the LDS Church simply because you've stopped believing its tenets? No, I'm just trying to spread truth. Aren't you the one who is, quote, othering and polarizing the LDS Church? No, not trying to get anybody to hate the LDS Church, just trying to expose the truth about it. If you think there's any common ground between Christians and those who gleefully murder their babies in the womb, who agree with, quote, gender fluidity and mutilation, who agree with loss of First and Second Amendment, who think it's okay to assassinate a president or national figure who was assassinated for his Christian beliefs, who think burning down buildings and cities is a good thing, who think illegals flooding this country is a good thing, and who prefer Marxism/communism to our constitutional republic, you are woefully naive. Any common ground between Christians and all of these people that he's othering? I'm 100% certain that there are Christians who believe in all of those things and Christians who disagree with all of those things. That statement is so political. I'm not going to get into it at all, but let the record show that this person brought politics into it, not me. I have not talked about the political stuff other than to say that the shooter's political ideology is ambiguous and apparently not anything to do with what he did on Sunday. Woefully naive. Okay. That might have been possible 25 years ago, but we're in a totally different place now. Either communism/NWO wins or we do. Okay. It's just that simple. We cannot share a country with those who want to dismantle our Constitution, our government, our churches, our schools, our families, as God defined it. Well, this is a wild statement because God did not define anything about our government. Yes, we are one nation under God, but the people who are claiming that this is a Christian nation forget that our nation was founded on religious freedom, which includes freedom from religion and includes religions other than Christian religions. So let's get that out of it right away. The two ideologies cannot stand side by side. It's impossible, and only a naive person would think it's possible. Well, you know what? Maybe I am naive, but I do believe it's possible for us to coexist with people who have different beliefs and ideologies than ours. It's not us versus them. It's not black and white. There is a spectrum of belief. There is a spectrum of political ideology, and I do believe that we can coexist. If you don't believe that we can coexist, then that means that you're done talking and you're done listening and you want violence. That's basically what you're saying. You're saying the only way to solve this is with violence because we can't coexist. Yeah. So, and just so that you guys know, these comments are annoying. They're frustrating. They don't bother me. I don't lose any sleep over this stuff because, number one, I know who I am and I don't care when people fail to see who I truly am. That's their problem, not mine. Most of the time, I respond to these comments by saying, tell me more, so that I get more engagement on my channel, because that actually helps the algorithm, which actually helps me make more money. Or I will say something like, thank you for your opinion, or I will say, you obviously don't understand. I try not to get in debates with these types of people because they do not care. And also, we do not care. We are part of the We Do Not Care Club. That's the thing. And Julie, this is a good point. Why are some of these people even listening? Well, I think some people enjoy this kind of supply. I think that they like getting all stirred up into hatred and then going in the comments and trying to, quote unquote, destroy someone in the comments. Excuse me. I genuinely don't care about their opinion about me. I don't care that they misunderstand me, but I will correct people who are spreading things that are verifiably false. And if they're calling me a liar or saying that I'm spreading lies, I'm going to ask them to be specific, because most of the time they can't. I'm happy to have a respectful conversation with people with whom I disagree. But I don't really understand why you would take this much time to write a comment like this and then not to be specific about what I'm lying about. Because I would think that if you have a specific thing that I lied about, that you would want to point that out so I could correct it. But they're not really interested in that. They're not interested in a conversation. They just want to call me a liar and then, and then run away. And, it's just silly. It's silly behavior. Here's the last one that I'm going to. Yes, thank you for this, Nina Canadian. You do have to share your country with people. With people of other beliefs. To do otherwise is violating human rights, and there are international human rights laws in 2025. Diamond Dave points out, ironically, many countries don't abide by those laws, and nothing happens, and that is sad. Mayflower Kid, thank you. This community gives me hope as well. Obviously not the ones who are being rude in the comments, but this community of beautiful humans here in the chat who are doing their best to engage with other people in respectful and kind conversations. This is the last one I'm going to share. This comment is offensive, and it was flagged by YouTube. And by the way, I don't delete comments from my channel unless they are hate speech. But I will also say YouTube flags comments that are held for review if they seem potentially offensive. And I also have certain words blocked on my channel. Most of them are racial slurs or epithets or, hateful and derogatory words. And so, if someone makes a comment and it doesn't show up on my channel, it's either being held for review or they used one of those words, or they posted a link, because I don't allow link posting because I can't possibly check all of the links to make sure that they are safe. So there's that. This is exactly what I'm going to say to anybody who says that I'm not telling the truth. Please be specific, because I want to be corrected if I'm wrong. But my suspicion is that you don't have something specific, or the thing you think I'm lying about is indefensible. So here's the last comment that I'm going to share. It is no one cares what this is Crusader_50. No one cares what a liberal murder party mentally ill thing says. You are the garbage in this country that needs to be removed. So here's me being literally trashed in my comment section because apparently I am a liberal murder party mentally ill thing and I'm garbage. So I don't really know how to respond to this because it's just so wildly inaccurate that I can't even think of anything to say. I can't remember if I approved this comment or not. I usually do approve the comments even when they're hateful. In fact, I got one the other day that said, F you, leftist Karen. But it used the actual word, and I think I might have the F word blocked. And so when I approved the comment, it disappeared, and I think that's what happened to it. But leftist Karen, I might make a t-shirt that says leftist Karen. Also, liberal murder party mentally ill thing. I don't know. I mean, I just don't know what to say. It's just hilariously stupid. Some of these people are 12-year-olds. So anyway, I wanted to address these comments. I don't have time to respond to all of them, but I just want people to know, like, if you're a faithful LDS person and you're coming for me in the comments because I've said things that are negative about your faith, your church, the organization, you may want to consider why it is that what I say makes you so angry. I think that's an important question to ask. When I hear something that I disagree with and it makes me angry, I want to dig down and figure out what's behind that anger. Most of the time, it's a fear of some kind or a shame of some kind. And in my case, when I was a faithful, believing Mormon, oh, thank you, Mama T. Love your guts too. This is so kind of you. I appreciate it. When I was a faithful, believing Mormon and people said negative things about the church, I often got activated as well. I often got emotional. I often got angry. And most of the time, I found out that the reason why was because if what they were saying was true, then that meant that my entire way of life was a lie. And I couldn't confront that truth. It was too high of a psychological hurdle for me to overcome, to consider that it might not be true. And it also meant that I had wasted a lot of time and money and a lot of my life believing something that was wrong. And I know how difficult that is to overcome. I've often said my faith crisis is the hardest thing that I've ever gone through, and that includes being essayed as a child for 4 years. It includes mental and emotional abuse and essay of almost every kind throughout my entire life. It was really hard. And so I understand why people are so angry. But I also think those same people probably haven't, I think a lot of those people, unfortunately, are willfully ignorant. I think they haven't investigated any of these things that any of these, quote, anti-LDS podcasters have said. And yeah, people have mentioned this a lot before, the abuse cycle and Stockholm syndrome. I've heard a lot of that. It is not realizing that you're being abused or lied to or tricked or duped, and then doubling down by siding with the person who is abusing or lying or tricking you. And it is a really sad thing to see, and I hate it. It's very, very sad to me. I can't possibly, none of us can possibly explain why or understand this individual who perpetrated this horrific act of violence on faithful churchgoers. It should never happen, should never have happened. I hope we get some more answers, but I don't know if we ever will. And if we don't, all I want to say is that the reason I covered this story is the same reason the same reason for anything that I cover on my channel, is because I believe that my perspective can lend some understanding, and because I believe that I have something valuable to add to the conversation. And I know, because of the comments of the beautiful humans who are on my channel, that I'm helping people. And that is all that I desire to do, is to help myself and other people to understand why these things happen, so that we can hopefully see these red flag behaviors in the people in our everyday lives, and so that we can speak up to them or for them, or to tell the appropriate person, or to express the concern in the best way that we possibly can. I really, really hope that what people get out of this is that. I'm sorry that I come across arrogant to you. Is certainly not my intention to do that. And I, more than anything else, am a student of life. I'm a voracious learner. I am a voracious researcher, and I do that because I care about the truth. I don't pretend to know everything about any topic, but I am sure of what I do know because I have researched so thoroughly. However, I always want to hear if I have left something out or if I've gotten something wrong. I am humble enough to know that even with my extensive research, I could be completely wrong about some of the things that I'm reporting. I'm open about saying that because I want to listen to the opinions of people with whom I disagree. I want to see other perspectives and hear other points of view. And you don't have to block somebody for saying that they disagree with me or saying that I'm arrogant. That's not hate speech. That's just someone who doesn't want to hear what I have to say, or who, if they truly do think I'm arrogant, that's a valid opinion for them to hold, and it doesn't bother me because it's far more a commentary on them than it is on me. So anyway, I hope that what people hear me saying is that my heart is broken for the victims of this tragedy. My heart is broken for our country, that this is where we are, that there's so much hatred and division that people think they have to resort to violence. Thanks for this, Diamond Dave. It's funny that you say that. We disagree on pretty much everything. I also think there's a lot we do agree on as well. And I think you're a beautiful human. I just hope that people will come away from this conversation with a greater desire to stop othering people and to engage in more respectful conversations with each other. I hope that's what people come away from it with. I don't know that I'll necessarily report on this again until, law enforcement comes out with something very definitive about motives or intentions or something written or recorded by the actual shooter themselves. So, yeah. I don't know, Diamond Dave. We should maybe have more conversations with that because I think we do have some common ground there, but I don't know that for sure. Thanks for this, Kresha. I'm trying to expose hatred and violence. I'm trying to expose lies and all of those things. So anyway, I want to leave you with just the thought and the idea that I believe the opposite of what that person said in their comment. I do believe that we can coexist with people with whom we disagree. More than ever, we need to, and we need to find ways to, and we need to find common ground and understanding. And even if we can't find common ground or we don't think we have common ground, can we at least just agree that we're all human beings? Can we at least just agree that people have a right to exist even if they believe differently than we do, even if they worship differently than we do, even if they have different political ideologies? That's what I hope more than anything else. So thanks for being here. Please don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribing to the channel is the best way to support me for free. If you are able to financially support, I do lots of extra content, bonus content, fun stuff over on my Patreon. And of course, sharing my channel with your friends, family members, anybody who needs to hear this is another great way to support the channel. And I just appreciate you guys being here. Even those of you who disagree with me, I appreciate your commentary. I appreciate your thoughtfulness and your desire to engage in conversation. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. And I hope that you will be kind to yourself and to others, even when you disagree. Love you guys.